All right. Welcome to another Crowd Wall Street podcast, episode 4. Why the thing like it went off? We're gonna start in a few minutes. We're waiting on a few more people to get on. If you're on here, go ahead and share this live. Share it to your page, share it to any Facebook groups that you're in. We're gonna get started in a few minutes. Just waiting for a few more people to get on. All right, we on YouTube. For those of you that's watching from YouTube, go ahead and share this link to everybody in your phone contacts. I mean everybody. You just share it to your grandma, your daddy, your sister, your brother. If your dog got a phone, send it to your dog too. Send it to everybody. We're gonna get started in a few minutes. Do my sharing. All right. Let's get it going. Welcome to another Crowd Wall Street podcast, episode 4 for 2021. If this is your first time watching our podcast, this is your first time seeing this face, seeing this guy right here. To introduce myself, I am Tavares Williams, better known as TL Williams, one of the founders at Crowd Wall Street, which is a crowdfunding platform to give minorities access to capital and resources. We recently launched our platform last year, August, which is the reward base. However, we are in the process of launching our equity and real estate portion on our platform, where we're going to provide opportunities for you guys to not only raise capital and have access to resources for your business or your investment deals, but also providing opportunities for individuals to invest and diversify their portfolio, and invest in startups and projects, development and real estate. Many people are familiar with buying stocks or option trading, especially what's going on now, but many of us are not familiar with how to invest in startups, invest in businesses. And, for the most part of the reason we was not aware of this opportunity because it was not really granted to a lot of people. Only the wealthy investors or the wealthy individuals only have access to invest in startups, similar to like VC funds, private equity companies. So based on the Jobs Act, thanks to Obama, it gave us an opportunity to actually grant what we call retail investors, give us opportunity to not only to invest in private markets, but also have the opportunity to become angel investors ourselves on a lower scale, where now you can invest in startups with just $100. $100 could get you a small equity ownership of any company of your choice. So we do have some updates as far as our company goes. So make sure, if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, which is Crowd Wall Street, make sure you join our Facebook group, Crowd Wall Street Group. We have a big announcement that we're going to make Sunday evening about, an update that we're in the process of doing this week. So make sure you guys are tuned in. Again, if you're on here, share this video. And now, enough of me. I'm going to bring in Mr. Benjamen, who is the CEO and founder of Spooler. So let's go ahead and bring him in. Big Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
What's going on, man?
Oh man, bless.
Well, I'm glad you took the time out to get on here to have this conversation and share some knowledge, drop some nuggets, let people know about who you are. So I guess the first thing first, let people know who you are and talk a little bit about Spooler.
Sure. My name is Benjamen Janey. I'm an entrepreneur, designer, serial entrepreneur. I think is very important to mention. Started my entrepreneur career at 21 in the music industry. Since then, I've launched a number of successful startups. My background is obviously music, UX design, UI design, product development, and fashion. 3 years ago, I founded Spooler, which is a seed stage tech-driven apparel company that utilizes technology to help people take control of what they wear and then the actual statements that they want to make. So, why I started Spooler, essentially, I was once an aspiring designer, looking to be the next Ralph Lauren or Marco Polo. And getting into the apparel industry, actually realized there were huge problems stemming from slow consumer response or huge overhead to operate the business, lack of social responsibility and original design. So through the course of the years, I launched a number of platforms utilizing technology marketplaces that essentially help consumers purchase clothing products online more efficiently, more conveniently, and more cost effective.
Nice.
Since then, we've raised a number of rounds of capital. We have an awesome team out here in California. We're opening offices, all around the U.S. and continue to grow and scale.
Nice. That's dope. That's dope.
Appreciate
Dive a little deeper into how are you utilizing technology in the sense of when it comes to apparel. Like, I don't think many people understand that. Like, how are you functioning with bringing technology to the apparel space where it makes it more easier for the consumers to shop easier online?
Sure. So that can play out in so many different ways. So a technology, some sort of tech integration into an apparel program or apparel company obviously translates in various ways. So
right.
There's 3D printing, that provides people the ability to essentially print clothing products on the spot and customize them on the spot. That's really where the industry going. And pertaining to my startup and the platform that I launched, we're using a number of different technologies. One on our e-commerce site called hdlvusa.com. Essentially is an e-commerce site that's segmented into various categories based on relevant topics in society. So that could be women empowerment, let's say Black Lives Matters, eco-friendly clothing, things like that. And then we're using AI to monitor these trends in the space, and then for design inspiration. And then we have a pipeline of designers on the back end that actually take these inspirations and submit artwork to us on a daily to weekly basis.
So basically what you're saying is, like, when there's a trend that's going on, like, for example, like you said, like the Black Lives Matter thing that was going on last year, your designers would then take whatever's trending, would take that and utilize it in an apparel way for those individuals to come on that site and purchase those shirts or hats or whatever based on what that trend is.
Based on and then it's not necessarily, so it's a trend, but the way that we filter it is more or less based on relevancy.
Got it.
And not only relevancy, but specific issues that sort of align with our brand values. So, for example, we're not going to send inspiration to our designers based off of a topic that may be relevant, but perhaps is negative, right? So we do sort of like filter the type of content that we submit to our designers for them to create artwork for. And one, because of obviously they have to align with our brand partners, and we also have strategic partners who we also have to be mindful of what their brand values are and make sure that we're continuing to represent that and respect that.
Got it. Nice. So I know prior to having this conversation, and I know you mentioned it when we first started talking about, having a great team.
Yeah.
So how important, this is kind of like two questions. How important is it for a founder to create a solid team around them? And then the second question is, how did you go about building your team?
Oh man, great question. Yeah, I would say, generally speaking, minority-based business, a non-minority-based business, your success absolutely is going to depend on the people that you have around you. Um, I think that the type of skill sets that are required for your team or for your particular company obviously have to do, with your field. Also have to do with your personal experience. And meaning, when I say your personal experience, meaning, if you're a startup founder and this is day one, you might want to hold off on, let's say, recruiting a PhD someone with a PhD as a CTO. Reason being is because he has much more knowledge and experience than you. And that would be a top heavy strategy, and you may not have this experience and skill sets yet to manage that type of talent. So team is important, but it's always about the right team. And again, that all has to come down to where you are as a founder, where you are as an entrepreneur, and then the stage of business that you're in. So different stages of business require different skill sets and different leadership abilities. So those are two things to kind of keep in mind. And the best way, in my opinion, to build a team, nowadays you have so many ways to do this, and like platforms at your disposal. You got LinkedIn, you have networking events or online networking events. I guess for me, the best way I've done it's been through personal networks and referrals. So tapping into those key relationships of people that you trust, mentors, advisors, reaching out to them and say, hey, look, I got an idea. I'm looking to, fill a gap. Do you have anyone in mind? Two ways that's beneficial is, one, it speeds up the process, right? Like you got somebody else who's actually, having a conversation for you. And then two, it's coming from a trusted source, both ways. Right. So the person they're referring is like, oh, I'm going to think more about this opportunity because it's coming from someone I trust. And then you are going to feel a lot more comfortable about the referral because it's coming from an advisor.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because I know that could be one difficult thing for most people, and realize, especially nowadays, you need a team behind you to build a company. Trying to do it, be a solopreneur, and trying to do, because in most cases, like especially for myself, like when you start in a business, in most cases, you start off wearing every hat that you can name. Like not only you cooking, but you taking orders, you actually clean, you're doing everything. Like you wearing so many hats. And granted, for the beginning stage, you may do that, but at some point, you have to start building a team around you, and that way you can focus on your skill set and what you're good at, and then eventually, bring a team on that specializes in different areas where your weakness is at. Right. And I think sometimes people get it confused because they try to recruit people or bring people on a team that do the same thing they're doing. And it's like, if both of us doing the same thing, something's going to be lacking off. Like, we have to find somebody to fill in those gaps. So I think it's important. Team building is important, and understanding how to manage a team.
That's right.
I think that's another layer of leadership. Being a founder comes with being a leader. So, like, what are some key things that you realized that you needed to do as a leader that helped you to be able to manage the team that you have now?
Oh, that's a great question. So I wanted to say, for all honesty, myself, like many other leaders, I'm sure you can relate to this. It's something that some people are born with, but even if you're born with leadership abilities, it really takes like the hands-on, nitty-gritty, everyday, like repetition of like making mistakes and learning what works and what doesn't work to really gauge how to lead. Like,
Definitely.
so you know, and I know you can relate. I made mistakes. You know, I had, you know, early in the early days, I had great people on board that I wish I could have, you know, perhaps retained, and you know, we maybe, you know, parted ways or work in a different capacity, whatever it is. So I would still say that number one is taking responsibility.
Yep.
So the successes and failures of this company, this project, this idea, they live and die by the leader. They live and die by the founder. You have to own that, and for a number of reasons, right? One, no one's really going to care. The reality is no one's really going to care as much as the founder about the company. And then two, like, you want your team to emulate that. So if the leader isn't emulating that, he's willing to go the extra mile for the company, how do you expect everyone else? So number one is you got to take full responsibility. Someone didn't send an email on time. Hey, have a conversation with them, you know, gauge with them what went wrong. But if you have to step in and take that to that email, then you got to
do it.
You got to do it. And then there's opportunity for performance review, you know, to discuss what happened, make sure that, you know, they meet these deadlines next time. But you know, you see it in sports, you know, sometimes someone's like Michael Jordan or LeBron James, you know, they are the leaders. They were the leaders of their teams, and so it's a point in time that he kind of has to take the weight on his shoulder and bring home the check. You know, that's a very like non-business school way of describing that.
It's true.
But
it's true. I think it worked both ways, because in reality, even speaking about sports, like you said, people look at LeBron or Jordan as the leaders of the team. So in some cases, if a team lose and LeBron had a bad game, the fans and the media would say LeBron had a bad game. Forget the team. LeBron had a bad game. Why? Because he's the leader. So they know if LeBron is on his top notch, there's a high chance that the team is going to step their game up. So it's kind of the same way in business. Like, you know, if as a leader of a business, whether you're a manager or supervisor, if your employees or your staff or your team seeing you, like you said, taking full responsibility and going the extra mile, it will motivate them to do the same thing as well. And I like that what you said about, you know, taking responsibility and also understanding that you're going to make mistakes. And I was on a live yesterday, and we was talking about that, because I think, number one, as a leader, there's already pressure on you as a leader, because you already know there's some sense of dependency on the way you lead. Same thing as being a parent. Like, you know, your kids depend on your lead. So whatever step you take, you already know there's individuals that's depending on the next move that you make that's in the right path. So it's already pressure right there, especially when you're running a company. So I think coming to grips, understanding like, hey, you know, at the end of the day, I'm gonna mess up. I might make the wrong call. I might make the wrong decision, but the key is, number one, like you said, taking responsibility. If you mess up, take responsibility, say, hey, I messed up. But the biggest thing is, how can we recover this? How can we find a solution to fix the problem and do it as a team? So that's key what you're saying, bro.
Right. Well, let me, like, so to that point, right? Like, there's also different type of leadership, right? And then certain situations sort of like call for those, you know, different ways of applying leadership, right? And there's a very distinct difference between leadership and management, and I think those are two things that people really get confused. So, for example, you know, management would be controlling or monitoring, you know, the ins and outputs of the day-to-day of a particular business. To some degree, you know, maybe perhaps structuring communication channels, making sure communication is clear, you know, checking in on invoices, make sure account payable is, you know, reaching out to clients. That's management. Leadership is really about direction. It's really about, not that the leader doesn't have to do those things.
Right.
But it's really about, setting the course, having this innate ability to predict where the markets are going to go, what the trends are going to be, and then setting that sail, going off and getting it done. So in a startup, that could translate into raising capital, meeting with investors, meeting with manufacturers, depending on what kind of company that you have, and just making sure that you're focused on financial stewardship, the financial health, in the sort of like the broad and more macro level thing, so that the internally everyone is has a job. At the end of the day,
so is it safe to say? Is it safe to say it's more important for a leader to have management skills versus a person who has management skills to have leadership skills?
That's a good question. Okay, so hold on. You trying to trip me up. Is it more important for a leader to have management skills, or a someone in management to have leadership skills? Wow. That's profound, man. No, let me think. I think the leader has to have management.
Both.
Well, yeah,
definitely a fact.
Yeah,
I believe definitely a fact. A leader must have management skills. Now,
absolutely.
far as looking at it from that angle, I think they both go hand in hand, to be honest. Because even as a somebody that's managing something, I guess that's a good question. And it just came off my head. That is a good question. But for a fact, we both can agree, as a leader, you need to have management skills. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But somebody who's just in a management position to put things in order and structure things properly, the leadership skills is not that important.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's valid. Yep, that's definitely valid.
So moving forward, like, one of the questions I ask every entrepreneur, especially during the process of building their business, and going through these different stages of business development, what is some of the challenges that you faced building your company?
I would say in the early days, some of the challenges were raising capital. As a minority founder, was
definitely. Let's talk about that.
Real, like, just just cut the chase like that. That's probably one of the most difficult areas that any minority-based startup company or whatever is going to have. The resources aren't as vast. I mean, look at it statistically. I was saying something about, I don't know, minority. Yeah, I think it was something like 1% or
1% VC funding.
Yeah, remember this minority startups. So when you look at it statistically, you look at the number of minority-based businesses that are funded, and the resources that are available. The odds are just against you, across the board. So I think that was probably one of the most challenging things that I was actually able to overcome. And I think it goes back to network. It goes back to building key relationships, key people, strategic partnerships, so that you're able to, build up and inject capital, but through the connections of your network, because it's too difficult to just cold pitch. In my opinion, really do go the cold pitch. These warm introductions, as we talked about when we were discussing building a team, getting referrals from your advisors and mentors or other people in your network. Same thing with raising capital. You really got to find people who know investors who can put a good word in for you and set up those meetings so that you have a much, to be honest with you, just a much better incentive.
Right. Yeah, you're not the first, and I'm sure you're not the only one that I heard there from, far as the lack of access to not only just capital but just the resource. So a lot of times we talk about the lack of capital, but a lot of people not talking about the lack of resource,
Yeah.
because there's several occasions of someone would get the funding but don't know what to do with it
Right.
because they don't have the proper resource or mentors or advisors that will help them facilitate and properly structure or manage the funds and use it in its proper space that it need to be used for. And so, part of, like, obviously, as you know, part of what Crowd Wall Street is trying to establish is not only creating an opportunity for minorities to have access to capital, but also access to resources to help scale their company, grow, and network to find those people to build a team around their business to help them have more of a sustainable and successful business.
Right.
Far as you raising capital, was that through like angel investors, venture capital, or private investors? Who were you out there like pitching to?
Yeah, that was a good question. My first round of capital were actually do institutional firms. So, and that's very rare, to be honest with
I
you.
was just for to say, like, how was how was that?
That's usually not with the minority founders.
Right, at all.
Yeah, no, I had a strong cash flow business. When I started off, literally with a table on Venice Beach, selling products, customizing products for celebrities, tourists, Venice Beach goers. I had a lot of success, and I had sales traction, and I was able to leverage that to raise the capital. Most startups, especially that are SaaS companies or in tech, it's the exact opposite because
Right.
they're zero cash flow businesses. So I don't know if you want to call it luck, because I've worked really hard to make the revenue in order to be able to go to a bank and get
Right.
the response
That paid off.
in the business plan. Like
Right.
I spent a lot of time creating a really strong plan, and getting the right people on the bus to get that yes, from the institutions.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, shoot, you worked for it. And that's the thing, unfortunately, you have a lot of other, entrepreneurs and founders that work hard in their business, but it's not always granted the same opportunity when it comes to getting access to capital. And then eventually, the business will end up flopping, and failing. And I think I had did a live video on YouTube when I was talking about the difference between a small business and a startup, right? So when you hear about the statistics about 90% or 95% of businesses fail, I think a big percentage of that 95% comes from the startup world. And when you look at small businesses tend to be more like mom and pop shops, more like non-scalable type companies where they're just, stable. And then when you look at startups are more scalable companies that's, what they call experimental. Like, some of these startup companies are in the process of finding product market, trying to find traction, social proof. So when you look at a big bulk of those companies that's trying to find a product market fit, most of those companies fail because, number one, they find out there's no market out there for their product or service, or number two, the challenge of finding access to capital to help take their business from point A to point B. And then I think a chunk of these businesses that fail comes from the startup world.
I
And you go ahead.
No, I said I agree. I agree.
So I think really where, like yourself and where we come in at is kind of trying to change that statistics, where now we're providing more of a resource center to help bring that number down from 90 to 95 to at least down to 70, 65%, because now these startups will have more of access to resources and mentors to help um their business become more stable and scalable. Think we lost them. So until Benjamin get back on, basically what I was saying when it comes to small businesses and startups, there's a big difference. And many people don't realize there's a difference between having a small business and having a startup company. And in reality, you would think it's the same way because, we hear it in our everyday language that, you ask somebody, do they have a business or what type of business? And they'll be like, oh, I have a startup. I'm a startup. I just started my business. But there's a key difference, especially in the private market when you're raising the capital. There's a key difference between having a small business where it's really the intentions of a small business is really not to scale and not to hyper grow it. Typically, when you're talking about small business, you're talking about having just a sustainable business just to maintain and, like a job, so to say, like a mom and pop shop. When you're talking about startups, like when you think of companies like um, Amazon, Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, when these companies started, um, even to this day, some of these companies are considered startups because they're when Airbnb first came out, when Uber and Lyft first came out, all these companies were in experiment mode, right? They was trying to identify a market that's out there for whatever product and services that they're trying to offer. And that's why a lot of these startups fail because eventually they will find out where, hey, there's no market, there's no need out there for what it is that we're trying to do. And so fast forward, understanding when it comes to VCs. And typically with angel investors and VCs, they already have the notion or the understanding that out of 10 to 15 companies that they invest in, they know it's a possibility that 8 or 9 of them may fail because it's an experiment. So the money that's been invested into these companies is to drive, more into the experiment to get their products out there, product development, to gain more traction, customers acquisition. And the whole goal behind that is for these companies to scale and possibly get acquired and go public. And I think that's one of the key things that many entrepreneurs need to understand because I had several people come to me and wanted to raise capital, and first thing they thought is, hey, I want to get VC funding. So I'm like, all right, cool. Like, what type of business you have? Where you at? Oh, we just started. We don't have, anything like VC is not where you want to go. And then the next question is, do you plan on going public or getting acquired? Like, VCs look for liquidity events. And if you don't have that in your pitch or your business plan, VCs is not the way to go. So definitely, right. I think that's far as people or entrepreneurs that's looking to get in this space need to understand that when raising capital, understanding the different flavors that's out there when it comes to angels and VCs, because like you said, you went to the institutional routes, and what helped you was you had a cash flowing business. And in some cases, most people who try to get institutional funding, they don't have cash flow. And so when you're talking about institutional, they don't want to take that risk because they're going to consider it high risk, because the first thing they're going to say is, hey, we're going to give you this loan, but based on the financial statements, I don't know how we're going to get our money back. We want our money back, right? We want our money back. Versus like angel investors or VCs, they're willing to take the risk with they're calculating the fact that they know, okay, it's a possibility we may lose, $20, $30, $40, $50,000. We take that. So, right. And that's the difference. When institutional, they'll do it in the form of debt. Angel investors, because they're taking a higher risk, they may do it in the form where they are going to do it in the form of equity. Right. So right. Far as you raising capital, going the institutional route, you pretty much didn't really have to give up, equity in your company. You was able to keep the equity in your company.
I was able to keep the equity in the company. And it really came down to a basic formula that banks use to determine if the company can meet the financial obligation. How much do you have left over every single month? Right. Come with a rate for the loan, 3 to 5%, whatever was it at the time, right. The principal. And amortize over 3 to 5 years. They look at the cash flow. Is there enough to meet that that payment? And if there is, then generally you can still not get approved.
Pretty much.
But that's one of the criteria. So it's cash flow, credit, character. Obviously, firms are not going to be backing founders that don't have character, and collateral. So those are a number of things that you have to have in place for institutional capital. As you mentioned, angels and VCs have a totally different criteria.
Yep.
And before you have those conversations, definitely do the research on what not only VC and angel criteria is in a broad sense, but the particular angel or VC you want to pitch. Like, really do the research, look at the companies that they've invested into in the past. Is your company similar? Are there similar interests? Do they go to the same school as you? Like, there's so many different ways you can vet. And I think that's one thing that startups don't do. They don't vet the investors. They feel as though it's just a one-way, heavy-handed conversation. I'm putting everything on the line. If this guy's invest, my life changes, and if they don't, then I give up.
Right.
The startups don't realize how much power you actually have, and you're giving up equity. And if you really believe in your business, then you need to believe that you're giving that investor a stake in something that's going to be potentially $1 billion exit in 10 years.
Facts.
Whatever it is. And put that value on your own stock, and then you should get that response back. And I just don't think startups do that. It's like, you're just as valuable as the VC or the angel. They're looking for you just as much as you're looking for them.
Right.
And before you sign that term sheet, make sure this is a angel or VC that you really feel like you can be comfortable with for the next 10 years.
Because the reality of it is understanding the fact that when you're pitching an angel or a VC and they decide to put money behind you as a founder, you eventually become partners. So that's why it's important as a startup, right? That's why it's important as a founder, entrepreneur, to vet these investors as well. Shahid said 1,000% correct. It is not a one-way street. And it's true, because most startups or founders come in because they feel like, I don't have anything, right? And I need you. I need the money. So they're willing to take anything. Like I said, I wrote a post a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying how founders are giving up equity like hotcakes, right? And they feel like it's a cheap way to get money. And then, and you think about it, 20% of $1,000 may be, let's just say this, 1% of $1,000 may not be nothing, right? I'm willing to give you 1% for $1,000. But then when you move up the chain and your business grow, that 1% of $1 million means a lot. That 1% of $100 million, it adds up. So in the beginning stages, it may not seem like a lot giving up equity so early in your company, but later down the road, that's going to add up. And I remember Benjamen Janey did a video on I think it was on a Breakfast Club. Equity is way more expensive than debt. I tell founders that is true. I watched a video where Benjamen Janey did an interview, and he was saying what he tell founders, especially in the beginning stages, bootstrap as long as you can, because he was saying, like, he said, if you give up equity so early in your company, when you start to raise more rounds and stuff like that, he said you're gonna be out of a job. He said you're gonna go back working at Red Lobster because you ain't gonna have no business no more. Right. Because by the time you do follow-on rounds and continue to raise capital, your equity percentage is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where you're going to lose your own company.
That's right.
So that's key. That is key, man. But this comes with education, right? It comes with because you think about let's talk about the music industry, right? Especially back in our days when you're talking about like the 80s, the 70s, even probably the 90s.
Mhm.
A lot of these artists was signing these contracts and don't even know what the contract even entail, right? Because they coming from a place of hopelessness, right? Like, I need this contract, I need this $1 million because the place I'm in right now, I want better. So I'm willing to take whatever it is that that you offer me, because they just looking at, like they say, the devil is in the details, right? So I'm
Yep.
looking at the amount of money, but I'm not really looking at the details. I'm not questioning the record labels. I'm not, finding out, what is the terms and what is conditions, like what it is that I'm getting into, because of the positioning that they're coming from. And then we see it, we hear about it. They make documentaries about it where these celebrities get caught up on these contracts because they didn't have the knowledge of what it was they was getting into. So the
Mhm.
same thing when we talking about entrepreneurs and founders, it is important for us to educate our people on these type of things, understanding how to read a term sheet, understanding what is a cap table and how a cap table look like. How should your company be evaluated? Like, you need to understand what you bring to the table, and you need to value your business to the point where you can sit at the table and negotiate with these investors and question these investors. Like you said before, find out what deals they did. Even get references from the companies that they invested in. What companies you invested in? Is there a way I could contact these entrepreneurs and seeing what was that like working with you, right? So
Right.
we have to develop that confidence, as entrepreneurs and as startups, and especially people that's black and brown, um, to develop that concept when it comes to business. I'm sorry, but this stuff need to be talked about.
It does, man. Like, I'm gonna keep it, a buck. Investors don't like to hear this, but I've turned down probably more VCs than I've said yes to, and it wasn't because this funding wasn't a need for the company. It's really about fit. It's really about fit, and making sure that you have the right, like we said, this is a partner in your business now, so you have the right partners on board, and that is a very, very, very important decision.
Yep.
And as Shahid said here, like, it's founders have much more power than they think, and it's not a one-way street.
Right.
Offering tons of value to that portfolio, for that VC as well. You should know that.
Definitely.
Not
So
saying turn down good opportunities. I'm not
no,
saying,
don't
we're not saying VC money
don't
is
do that.
good. We're just saying that make sure that you look fully into the opportunity, and don't sell yourself short.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Just because it's a great opportunity doesn't mean you just have to take it best the first time you hear about it. You
Sure.
also want to do your due diligence to make sure that the opportunity is living up to what it says in black and white, right? Or making sure that these investors are living up to what they say they're going to do, because um, you have different investors when it comes to investors that just give you the money, you do what they do, or the investors may want their hands in the pot too. They might want to get involved and help out, hand by hand, and things of that nature. So those are things to consider as well. And going back, I think, I don't know if we said it on here, but when you look at Shark Tank, if you look at the way they invest in companies, they all have their own criteria, their own niche. And in some cases, they may take a chunk of money because they feel like they're providing more value, more resources. And then there's a one lady, I think recently, the first new episode they had, you know, black woman, I can't think of her name. She came out with a sports drink. I love it because at the end of the day, she stood her ground. When they
Right.
gave her offer, especially with the equity ownership that they wanted, she told them, no, I'm not taking that. And that's the confidence that we have to develop. Be willing to tell the sharks, no, you're not for to have 40% of my company because I already did XYZ. I already built the brand. I already have contacts. I already had this. I need that. I just need this portion, and I'm not willing to give up 40% of my company. And I think for the most part, yeah, investors may not like it, but they're going to respect you at the end of the day because you're on top of your game. But enough of that. We could go on a spill on that all day.
Yeah, we could have a podcast just on that one.
Right, just on that portion alone. But far as they say, Jansky said they're gonna try to lowball us. Of course, if we don't know what we're doing, they definitely gonna lowball us, especially because if they have experience in the industry, they will know automatically the value of your company.
That's right.
But if you don't know the value of your own company, they definitely gonna lowball you.
That's right.
The same thing as an individual. If you don't know the value of yourself, it's easier for people to run over you and take advantage of you if you don't know the value of yourself as the founder.
These VCs are sharp and they know what they're doing. The requirement to become a VC, especially if it's a general partner, a LP in a company in a firm, the associates may be working their way up. But some of the general part, these guys know exactly what they're doing, and they'll play games with you, like
because they're looking at deals every day.
Yes, right. Leverage.
So they know the industry, they know what to look for, they know everything. So when you come in, they already have a preconceived notion of what your company is valued at. They already know,
and they already know what they want to give because. In the VC's mind, talent is vast, but opportunity isn't.
Right. True.
That's just the mentality. It's not wrong with it. It's not. It's just.
It is what it is.
Well, startups just need to know that when they go into these conversations. That's
yep. It is what it is. So let's shift it a little bit. Got 15 minutes. So let's shift it a little bit. Far as like Spooler, like. Where do you see the company 5-10 years from now?
That's a great question. Without giving out, too many.
Of course.
But we want to be the leader in this space, in terms of technology and fashion. We definitely see ourselves getting into 3D printing, cutting edge manufacturing, equipment. And just helping to create a new world in terms of how we consume fashion on a day-to-day basis. And I'd love to get into the meat and potatoes of that, but we try to stay competitive.
Got to.
We can't give out too many.
Can't give out the sauce just yet.
Yeah, we're in this to to be the leader in this space, and at the end of the day. Help make the improvements, to this industry that we think will be valuable for consumers.
Nice.
Using technology.
Of course, technology is key, especially today and moving forward for the next decade. Technology is the key. So the last question I have that I ask on every podcast, what is one advice that you would give an inspiring entrepreneur or founder that's looking to get into entrepreneurship or even starting a business or a startup?
I would say, my response is going to be for you to focus on belief as like esoteric and, again, non-MBA that sounds like. Believe in yourself, believe in your product, believe in your abilities, have, the ability to change and adapt when you need to. You need to be learning new things every single day. But I got off a call earlier with a new factory we're talking about doing some work with, and the product manager did a presentation about like a new product they have in development. And man, like this guy's belief and passion that he had about this particular rollout was so inspiring. We were already thinking about doing business with him, but just his belief in this, in this idea just got me so much more inspired and willing to work with their company. So it's contagious. The more you believe in yourself, the more you believe in your product and your idea, the more others will too. And I would say that's probably my biggest advice.
I think it's key. If if people see the enthusiasm behind you and your business, or your product and services that you're offering, like you said, is contagious. That it's going to force that other person to be as enthusiasm as you, because they see the passion behind what you're doing, and the effort that you put behind your business. So I definitely that's key. So for those that's viewing on YouTube, Facebook, and how can they, if they want to get in contact with you, reach out to you, learn more about you, or even purchase some shirts or some apparel, like how can they find you?
Very easily. I'm on all social media channels: YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. It's just Benjamen Janey, BenjamenJaney. As you can see right there on the screen. And then if you want to purchase some of our products from Spooler, go ahead over to hdlvusa.com. That's our e-commerce site that creates on-demand apparel for socially conscious shoppers. We have a Sesame Street partnership. We have a Tootsie Roll Industries content partnership, and 25,000 designs from artists all around the world that you can buy from, including this one right here from an awesome nonprofit called Reach Up, Reach Out, who sponsors widows in Uganda.
Nice. That's dope. I like it. Great. All right, man. I appreciate the time, Benjamen. And for those that are viewing this won't be the last time you see Benjamen. So so definitely huh?
I said definitely not.
Yeah. So again, we appreciate you, for those who was listening, and again for those who checking the replay. We really appreciate you. Just go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, join our Facebook group, Crowd Wall Street group. And until next time, we'll see you guys next week for another podcast. Again, thank you, Benjamen. We appreciate having you.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to the future.